facility or a new road. But it commonly involves architectural improvements, so you're building a project, you might care about the internal diversity or you might feel like you're vulnerable to external acoustics impinging on a building. Commonly it overlaps with the sustainability we'll get to during the course of so just to give you all a quick overview, I'm just going to briefly talk about what is sound and why is it important. Then we'll talk about acoustics and sustainability and how they actually overlap. And then also how acoustics and sustainability ideas are conflict from time to time. So two principles that provide sustainability cause noise. When we're touching on office acoustics, I usually bring a speaker. Working? Yeah.
Hello? Yeah. So I usually bring a speaker where I play different sounds and it gives examples of poor acoustics, good acoustics, but we've got a great form here of acoustic issues which I'll probably touch on during the course of the presentation. And then finally I'll just briefly mention some solutions to the problems that occur in the conflict with acoustics and sustainability ideas. And then I'll finish up with just some questions if you have any. Feel free to ask any questions during the course of the presentation. So what is sound? So sound is a pressure wave that moves all around us. It moves at about 340 meters a second. So if you're 2 football pitches away and someone fires a starter pistol, you'll see the flash, and about a second later you'll hear it. It has a couple of characteristics, it has a lot of characteristics, but primarily we think about how loud it is, so its amplitude, and also its frequency characteristics. So that's if it's tonal, for example, or if it's high-pitched, or if it's low-pitched, does it rumble? We measure it in hertz, and that's how often the air particles move every second. But why is it important? Well, once upon a time ago, I start all stories with once upon a time ago, our surrounding environment was fairly tranquil by today's standards. We had noise in it, we had natural noise sources like the wind in the trees, we had animal noise sources around us. But our surrounding noise environment was much quieter than it is today. And what happened? Well, about 250 years ago, the Industrial Revolution happened, and it brought with it a lot of kinetic energy. And kinetic energy generates noise, so it's a kind of a side effect of it. And because of that, the noise that you are exposed to is significantly higher than that would typically occur in nature. And because of that, noise-induced, it's Dublin today, sorry. But noise-induced hearing loss, for example, is one of the most prevalent occupational diseases in the industrial world, at least. Environmental noise is actually the second most burdensome health hazard in Europe today. Would anyone hazard a guess at what's number 1? It's air quality or air pollution. After that, it's noise. It causes a range of problems. It can cause sleep disturbance, it can cause hypertension, it can increase your chances of having a heart attack if you live in a high noise area. It can cognitively impair you, so particularly in a learning environment, young children, if they're exposed to high levels of noise, they won't learn as well. We know this. And then particularly on today's topic, it affects focus, it can induce stress, it can be distracting, it can limit the amount of privacy you have from one space to another, and generally, and we've all been there, it can be annoying depending on the source of it. So because of this, we've got a range of standards and guidelines. The most probably recent relevant guideline that's kind of dropped into the Irish regulatory form is Technical Guidance Document E, Sound, which is for any multi-residential dwellings to protect adjacent spaces from each other. And we've got a range of standards. We've got council policies and EPA requirements. For example, if you're building a house or a lot of houses near the airport, Fingal County Council will put a requirement that those houses are designed to such a degree that they're sufficiently protected from the aircraft noise in the area. And more importantly, with sustainability, you get credits. You get credits for good acoustic design. For BREEAM standards, there's one credit with LEED, and then the most recent one is the Home Performance Index, which is being recently launched by the Irish Green Building Council, which will give you credits as well. And why is this? Well, we take a step back and we talk about sustainable design. That's evolved over the last 20 years or so. It used to be just being energy efficient and the likes, but really it's a philosophy in your design. and it talks about designing the built environment to comply with the principles of social, economic, and ecological sustainability. But fundamentally, buildings need to be designed to be comfortable, efficient, and functional. So depending on what you're designing that building for, you need to consider how well you need to design it for acoustics. So I'll just touch on this again. So a building, when we look at it from an acoustic point of view, is generating noise internally, and that noise is propagating through the space, and that could be affecting your adjacent, an adjacent room. Or in this case, we've got a very noisy event happening in the middle here. That's coming over, and it's making it more difficult for you guys to understand me. So that's one thing that we need to consider. We've got environmental noise intrusion. So we've got traffic noise. If you build a house or a commercial premises near a busy road, that traffic noise can break through the facade of that building and make it very distracting for the occupants of that building, depending on what the function of that building is. And then you've got internal noise generation. So we now move air around the building a lot of times with HVAC systems. We might have plant rooms there. We might use it for something like music, and that might break out of the building and affect the neighbouring properties as well. So acoustics in building design is really a reaction of the more fundamental components of a building. You've got the architectural layout. Are you designing a space that easily allows the sound to propagate throughout the building? You've got the structure itself. Is the facade of the building constructed of sufficient material to attenuate the sound sufficiently before it breaks in? And yet again, you've got the building services. So, I don't know if this is the right one. So, what's happened with modern sustainable building design is that we've introduced new elements that compared to traditional construction requirements. So, whereas before we might have a solid facade, we've now introduced larger amounts of glazing, and maybe if it's a passive building, that glazing might be operable windows. And if you open them windows, you're letting more sound into that environment. You're also with the likes of chilled beams, reducing the internal noise levels that would have normally been generated by the HVAC system. So the HVAC system originally would have introduced quite a lot of noise, but now that's now diminished because they're not as loud as they were before. And this causes a range of problems, particularly in the office environment. Let's see if I'll go back. If you consider the analogy, you're in a darkened room and you switch on a torch and the light comes on from that torch, you'll see it straight away. But if you're in a bright room and there's lots of light in it and someone switches a torch on, you might even notice they have it on. The same happens with background noise in an office space. So now that the noise levels in office spaces are decreased quite a lot, you notice noise that were already there and present, but a lot more. And this is typically in an open plan office, or the modern advent of the open plan office, where you don't have partitions to attenuate the noise. It causes a lot of distraction, and it's in post-occupancy surveys, particularly in sustainably designed buildings, it's one of the worst. It's got one of the worst satisfaction ratings. It causes a lot of problems, and we try and overcome it in many different ways. One of the ways we try and overcome it now is through good design. A lot of the previous presenters have been talking about getting us in early so we can work through your projects, but even just consider acoustics early in your project. Is it going to be a problem? Can really help. You can change the layout of a building without any additional cost to make it more functional for use. Okay, so getting it. So anyway, so going back to the fundamentals of sustainability, we want to produce efficient workspaces that are productive and comfortable to use. But if we design it wrong and we get it wrong, they're too quiet and noise carries too well. We get very little speech privacy between areas, and we need higher performing separating walls between spaces. And if it's too noisy, people can't concentrate, you can't hear people on the phone, and you get a low satisfaction rating. So other spaces, we commonly have a meeting room and open plan offices, but we can get a little bit more flexible with that and add in pods and collaborative working spaces so that you can have loud teleconferencing effects, but not necessarily intrude on the surrounding area. So here's some examples. Like, this is your general open plan office. Even in the traditional open plan office, we used to have partitions between desks. Interior designers don't like them anymore, so they've got rid of them. So that allows the noise to travel all the way down throughout the office space. But then we can introduce elements. For example, here we've just got a meeting room. People can go have a private conversation if they need to. So if you're an employer talking to an employee, you might need to have a private conversation. Or you can have a noisier, more collaborative kind of forum in that room without it impacting on the surrounding space. We've got issues like reverberation. So that's how much the sound sustains in a space. And to mitigate that, we might need sound absorption. Like in this space, if you look around on the ceiling, there's nothing really to absorb the sound, and as a consequence, it's transmitting right down the whole hall. But here you've got quite a luxurious panel, but it's all panelled here to mitigate that sound. And it is particularly important when you have a teleconferencing facility. And then more recently, we've started getting a little bit more glamorous with our interior design, but there are purpose to these. You can have a degree of privacy in certain sections when you need to. If you need to have a one-on-one teleconferencing conversation, you can put in these pods. This one here is a collaborative pod, but it also absorbs the sound in the space. So it has a dual effect of giving a degree of privacy and not letting the sound break out from that space. Some things that go wrong, this space looks great. It looks great, but it's full of glass. It's full of glass and hard surfaces, and that doesn't absorb sound at all. You've got a meeting room in that space that's going to generate a lot of noise, and it's not separated from the surrounding area at all. So what you're going to have is, even when people are discussing at normal voice levels at that table, they might be able to communicate that well because there'll be so much reverberation in that space. So it looks great, but from an acoustic point of view, it's a poor design. So, sorry, let's skip on. So the key message that I just want to get across here, you get credits. You get credits in sustainable design standards. You get them from reverberation, so that's how much the noise sustains in a space. You'll get them for the performance of partition systems, how well they attenuate the sound across them. But you'll also get credits for other things. You'll get credits for introducing chill beams and reducing the energy levels. You'll get credits for being passive and maybe having open window systems or automated open control, which will introduce noise problems. And the objective of the space is for it to be comfortable, efficient, and functional. But if we focus just on the credits and forget about what the outcome of the space is, a lot of times you can get it wrong. And this usually only gets noticed afterwards, and it actually costs a lot, as we all know, to mitigate something afterwards. So key point is never let the credits get in the way of good acoustics. Thank you.